Pfizer and Moderna are seen at the moment as the front runners in developing a possible vaccine because of the setback that you faced in your trial and the pausing of the trial in the US. Despite that setback, could you still come out and have that first vaccine available?
Good morning, Francine. First of all, let me say that we all hope that there will be several vaccines available to people around the world. The quantities of doses that are required are enormous, and several manufacturers will have to hold hands to work together to make sure we have enough. Now, we at AstraZeneca have two programs. One is a US study of about 30,000 patients that has indeed been delayed because of a pause we experienced. But the other program is the international program that is relying on 22,000 patients who are vaccinated in essentially the UK and Brazil. And that program has been progressing very well, and we hope and believe we should get results by the end of this year latest.
In light of the US trial halt and setback, do you believe you'll get approval for a vaccination in Europe and in the UK before you get in the US?
This is for the regulators to decide this. It really depends on their assessment of our clinical results. Certainly our international program will deliver efficacy and safety results that will have to be assessed by individual regulators, including the FDA in the United States. So they may want to wait for the results of the US study, or they may review our international program and give us an emergency approval on that basis. I cannot really comment. It will be up to the regulator in individual countries to decide.
But Mr. Soriot, when you look at this vaccination, what's your biggest concern? That you don't, that mathematically you have the formula, but it's very difficult to store it and to put it out there, that people won't want to take it, that regulators, are too slow or too quickly. What's the one thing that could actually get you off track?
Well, the only thing that I worry about is really to make sure the vaccine works and that other vaccines work too. We still don't know. We've been doing a lot of work and running very quickly to be ready, but at the end of the day, we don't yet know if the vaccine works. We have very good immunogenicity data, good antibody level, good T cells levels, but we will know soon whether it works or not. And, if we have good efficacy and good safety, as we hope and expect to get, I think the public should be reassured by the fact that not a single regulator, but many regulators around the world will look at this data independently from each other. First of all, we have independent safety committees already looking at the data regularly, but then we will file with the FDA, the EMA in Europe, MHRA in the UK, in Japan, in Australia, in Canada, and all those regulators will look at the data and make their decisions independent from each other. So that should reassure the public that many independent health experts will look at this data.
Mr. Soriot, Tom Keene in New York, thank you so much for joining us. I'm very curious as to what your vaccine will cost, and that it's adenovirus-based versus some of the fancy genetics vaccines. Do you have an idea of the range where your vaccine will be distributed and what price that will be?
Yes, actually, the important point here is that we have committed to distribute this vaccine at no profit for the duration of the pandemic period, and which means that the hundreds of millions of doses that have been ordered already, regardless of when they are delivered, will be supplied at no profit. And the cost ranges between $4 to $5 a dose, depending on where the vaccine is manufactured. And the variation is simply due to variation of cost structure in their different geographies.
Well, I think this is a huge mystery, and I was speaking to our Alex Morales about it, of our pharmaceutical team. And Mr. Soriot, what's so important here is for our audience to understand we get a vaccine, and when will we be in our doctor's offices? Do you have any sense of that timeline?
Yeah, so if I assume for a minute the clinical data will read out positively, and again, as I said earlier, we all hope that it will be the case. We expect to have data by the end of this year. Then it is in the hands of regulators, not government, not ourselves, but simply the regulators, MHRA, EMA, FDA. And if they review the data quickly, and I'm sure you've seen that many of those regulators around the world have announced that they've started a so-called rolling review of our data, which means they look at the data we submit to them as they become available. Then on that basis, they should be able to make a determination very quickly. So we would hope that large-scale vaccinations will be possible starting in January next year, possibly even December.
Mr. Soriot, does the U.S. election and who gets into the White House actually change the speed of approval or the speed of acceptance within U.S. citizens of a vaccine?
I think what will influence the speed of vaccinations in different countries is really public trust in an independent health experts review of the data. And as I said a minute ago, the FDA is, of course, a very stringent regulator, but it's not only the FDA that will look at this data. European, UK, and other regulators around the world will look at this data. And I think the public can be reassured that the vaccine is safe and effective if all those regulators give it the green light. And then I don't think it depends on which administration in a given country is in charge. I think it really is the regulator and the health experts have to give that confidence to the public.
Mr. Soriot, what's baffled you most about the virus? We look at this day in, day out. Is it the response that people can recatch it? Is it asymptomatic cases? Is there something that actually you thought you'd never really see in a pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with this vaccine is it's very high infection. It's very infectious. And so, it's many people get infected very quickly. So first of all, everybody has to be really cautious and keep in mind to wear their mask in public places, and then, of course, wash their hands and all these measures of social distancing that have been many times recommended. Then for the vaccine, a key question, of course, will be, will it work? Another key question would be, in how many patients, what percentage of patients does it work? Another key question will be, if it doesn't work completely, does it at least stop people from being hospitalized? So for those patients where it may not be protecting them completely, if at least it stops them from developing severe disease, then you've turned this infection into a very, very modest respiratory infection. You're okay. And the last question is, how long does it protect? Many questions we don't have answers for yet, but hopefully those clinical trial results will enlighten us a little bit.
Mr. Soriot, what is the one thing that must change in a post-pandemic world?
I think if we can develop a vaccine that works well, and I would also say that in parallel, a number of companies are developing so-called antibodies, monoclonal antibodies. We are developing ourselves a long-acting combination of two antibodies, and we hope it can protect people for up to 12 months with the right dose. Now, if you have antibodies that protects people that cannot be vaccinated because they have an immune disease or they are in dialysis, and also can help treat the people who have not been vaccinated, then I think we will have the tools to return to a normal life. But it is clear that COVID will have accelerated history in my mind, and a number of long-term trends that we've seen developing have accelerated. The rise of digital, working differently, and all these changes really will be accelerated, have been accelerated by COVID, and the post-COVID world will be a different world where technology is taking a bigger role.